All right. Hello, everyone. We're starting in 2 minutes exactly. Gonna give some time for people to hop on live for those who want to, and then we're gonna go. Hopefully, my voice issue is a little bit fixed. Our last one was a little bit quiet for some reason, but hopefully it's better now. Yeah, we'll be talking about some interesting stuff today. Extra dimensional entities, plasmoid portals, um, energy, the movement of energy, truth, lies, deceit. Interesting topics. Very important topics as well. There's a lot of misinformation and misdirection, conscious and unconscious, going around with these topics. And those who have the eyes to see and the ears to listen, I feel you'll find yourself resonating with some of the more true parts of what we're going to say today. Um, so definitely interesting. I like to keep it within the boundaries of practical knowledge. Obviously, there is abstract knowledge that is beyond practicality that I would not want to dabble in too much because that seems to be the case where most people in this space who are, you know, deceitful and so on and so forth, they like to do that where, they will reach into a certain depth that most people cannot relate to when it comes to a subject, especially esoteric subjects or scientific subjects. I like to take the heart of something and pummel it into simplicity, so to speak. Now, primarily what I want to talk about today, I guess, and I'm not sure if these are lectures or me sharing my experience or lessons or so on and so forth, but an interesting thing to understand about this world, something that I think a lot of people are avoidant of understanding, is that we live in a realm of ever shifting energy. Um, and there's prerequisite knowledge to everything. Now, this knowledge doesn't come without a price, and most of it is intuitively gained. So it's not some sort of thing where you go through like 12 grades or whatever, like you do in school or in college or university, and then at the end you get this, great reward or whatever diploma or anything like that. No, initiation in the occult. And I really, laugh out loud when people say, "Oh, the occult tradition." What tradition? Where is the tradition? How can it be a tradition if it is occult? Occult means hidden away, hidden, unseen. That which is unseen on an objective material level. How can one become initiated? One can only become initiated in a cult, right? Now, if you were in a cult, yes, be my guest. You can become initiated in a cult that studies the occult, but not within the occult itself. It's ridiculous. So when we are presented with such ridiculous notions, and I know I always start these with a disclaimer, but I feel like they're very important to go through. You have to understand that most of the information you hear is wrong and is baseless and is just a regurgitation of an idea or a concept that people are either subscribed to by chance or through some sort of personal or cultural or national agenda. Then the question appears, how do we decipher the truth from that which is, you know, not provable in a material empirical sense? And I, unlike some people in my field, I'm a big supporter of empirical study and research. There must be proof. There must be irrefutable or partially irrefutable proof of what a person preaches, right? If there is no proof, then it's just a competition of your word against mine. That's not good enough for me and never was. And that's why I became initiated in the field of occult and esoteric study. And I became initiated not by some group or mentor or teacher, no, but I went to the heart of it all. And the heart of it all is learning how to interact with the world, with the unseen levers of the world. What are these levers? Where do they come from? Now, to first understand anything that we're going to touch today, which is relatively complex but not too sophisticated, hopefully, one must understand where you are, right? Now, we are in this quantum field, right? This interconnected matrix of infinite possibility, yet this matrix itself is governed by physical law. And we're not going to get into the conversation of, well, why is that? We already talked about that previously, and we're going to talk about that in the future as well. But you just have to understand where you are. I posted about this yesterday. And even some great thinkers, some wonderful philosophers, great psychologists, scientists, so on and so forth, bright minds, even they do not understand the level of complexity that our world has and how this level of complexity manifests. Now, the first thing you need to know about our world is that the only thing that it respects, the only thing creation respects, is free will and choice and the manifestation of that free will. Now, who is even able to have free will in our world? Is a tree able to have free will? Nope. Is a plant able to have free will? Nope. Is a dog able to have free will? To a small degree. Why? What's the difference between a tree and a fucking dog? Excuse me for swearing. What's the difference? Think about it. Well, the dog is, for the most part, 96%, let's say, or somewhere up there in numbers, a slave to its base primal instinct. It needs to feed, it needs to hunt, it needs to find sustenance. Sustaining oneself is the prerogative and prime directive. You could even say it's spiritual directive to survive. But what the means of its survival? Great. But what is the purpose of its survival? What is it worth surviving for in this world? Why hold on to this world if it's only about holding on to the world, right? What are you holding on to? I need you to ask this question to yourself and really think about it. Now, let's move from, let's say, a dog to a human being or a child. Does a child have free will? Yes. Is that free will premeditated? Is it consciously aware? No, not much. A child as well, very much like an animal, is a slave to its primal directive, to its base instinct. Now, as the child matures and grows, its energy field expands itself, and its consciousness and awareness and experience of the world expands itself. It learns. And at some point, at a breaking point in their life, they are exposed to free will. Now, if free will is a base component of our world, how is our world even made manifest? Now, I would argue, and probably the brightest minds, not the brightest minds I spoke about, but the true brightest mind in this world will withhold this information for them and for good reason, unlike myself, will say, well, the world is a mirror. So whatever you input into the world, it will come about at you in the shape of what you're inputting within it. So if you input in the world, let's say a formulaic pseudoscience like astrology, right? The world around you will form according to this formula. You ever heard of a theory like this? You know how everyone's looking for something tangible. Oh, tangible. Oh, empirical proof, tangible. How does the world works? And they're dumb. They're not smart enough, let's say, right, to understand that the world could work in many ways. If you have the audacity and the ego to assume that the world works in only one way and that one way is the truth, and then you found proof of, oh, the meaning of life, I found it, it is this, it is that. Idiot. A moron's judgment on the world, right? And these morons dominate the scientific space and the esoteric space. Only a moron is convinced that their own reality and the proof of their own reality is the consensus reality, when the world is so much more than that. The world, on a quantum level, only respects what you input into it through the usage of free will. What does this mean? What are the implications of what I'm telling you here? And this is very high level stuff. I hope you understand. Just because I'm saying it in a casual manner, right? This is very high level stuff. People, sit on mountains for decades and still don't get to this point. How have we gotten to this point? How do we understand this? Because we have the humbleness to assume that we don't have the full picture. So when we say, when we ask, excuse me, what are the implications of this knowledge? Well, I'll tell you what. Let's say you meet your neighborhood numerologist and they're like, well, today is a 7 day, or whatever those people say. Oh, today is a 7 day. And 7 days are for learning, or something like that. Why? Why? Because it represents a formulaic reference point within time and space and within the human metrics of time and space. It's only a 7 day according to the human interpretation of the day. Now, if there were another race of humans who used a different calendar, it would not be a 7 day, it would be a 3 day. What do we do then? And then the greatest numerologist on the planet, or whatever, the smartest and most knowledgeable, they'll come in and tell you, well, which one will work? I'll ask them, and they'll tell me, well, the one will work that most people subscribe to. Oh, really? Hmm. So you're telling me it's a vote. So it's not the objective truth, it's a vote then. We're casting a vote. Well, if it's a 7 day, it's a day for learning. Why? Because most people decided it's woo. But they will never admit to the implications of that. They'll never tell you how to climb the tree. They'll just tell you how good it is when you're on there. Oh, you have this wonderful view from the tree. But I'm going to tell you how to climb the tree. And I'm going to tell you the secret all of these deceitful, lying morons know. And I call them deceitful, lying morons because that's what they are. And they know that's what they are. These are not words of offense, these are words of objective truth. Now, if it is so that if we live on one island and we decide today is a 7 day and a 7 day is good for learning, will that affect the reality at hand? Yes. There are many even scientific studies, if you dig deep enough, that prove this. Yes, it will. So, thus, the primary attribute of our world changing has been not the fact that it is a 7 day and the energy of the 7 day that dominates the quantum field, but the belief that it is a 7 day. And even beyond that, the input within the collective input within the quantum field that today is a 7 day. Do you like football? I don't know. Like, do you enjoy soccer? Right? I don't. I have absolutely no interest whatsoever in football or soccer, whatever you call it. Soccer if you're in the US, football if you're in Europe. I have absolutely no interest. So then someone will ask me, well, if you haven't input football in your life, why does it show up? Does football show up in your life? You probably don't give a fuck about football unless you're a fan, in which case I'm sorry. But if you don't give a crap about football and it shows up in your life, what is that? Right? How does that work? I'll tell you how it works. There is such a thing called an egregore. It's a French root word, but it goes far way back, way beyond that word. EGR, EGORE, egregore. And an egregore is a semi sentient collection of collective energy. And this energy is formed when a large piece of human minds collectively input the same belief system within the quantum field of our world, of our three-dimensional world. So football, right? What makes football football? It's just 22 people running around kicking a stupid ball. If you didn't know what football was and you saw it for the first time, you'd be like, damn, this is dumb. But now it's a worldwide event. People get paid billions of dollars to throw a ball around. What makes it so? So if you changed one rule in football, would it still be football? Probably not, right? So football is this dogma. It is a very much like our three-dimensional world, a collection of laws which are followed and collectively agreed upon. We agreed that football is, this, if the ball, is hit after a certain, you know, distance or whatever, that's a goal. There's a goalkeeper. There's this many players. These are the rules, yada yada. And because so many people are involved within the creation of football as an egregore, as a concentrated, energetic entity that exists within the human collective, the imagery of the human collective, it is then what? The egregore becomes primed in the quantum reality. So that egregore will become the dominant reality. So that egregore is so powerful, very much like religions, which are also egregores, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, that to a certain degree they will infiltrate your life. They become a penetrating force. And they will be introduced into your life, even though, like me, JackOfFaces does not care about football. I don't like football very much. I think it's rather boring, but I'll still watch sometimes because it's there. When I go to a restaurant, it's on the television. When I go to a bar, it's on the television. When I go to my neighbor's house, they keep talking about it with their kids and wife. Right? It's everywhere. Now, how does if that works with football, right? Oh, the cool part that I missed. If everyone stopped feeding into football, suddenly no one likes football anymore. Something happened. Nobody cares about football anymore. Will it continue to exist? Yes. For a stage, for a layer, for a phase of time, it will continue to exist because the egregore, this is how it works, okay, is an energetic exchange program. It is the first bank of the universe. And when you give energy to an egregore, look, we go to a football event, oh, the energy is crazy, people are going nuts. Your favorite team scored a goal, you have this incredible harvest of emotional energy within you. You have this dopamine rush that feels good, it feels pleasurable to be on that football field. You feel the energy of the fans, you're all on the same side, right? It is an equal exchange, right? So you get a positive charge, a fusion of energy, and your opponent who is losing, they get a negative charge or a negative infusion of energy. So when you give the egregore your emotional energy, which feeds into the channel of this belief system that you even created through football, or through the game of football, later on in life, so let's say your favorite team lost today, your egregore was fed, it thickened, it became fattened with this negative energetic charge, right? And it grew in size and reach because it is the cause, it is the indirect cause of your current emotional state. Later on, when your team wins, it is going to elate you. It's going to give you this dopamine rush, crazy emotional energy, infusion of it, energy. And suddenly you feel amazing and you love football. You think you love football. I love football so much. It's my favorite sport. And when you go to the stadium and there's 150,000 people there, and when like when the ball like reaches the goal or whatever, the people on the stands, they explode into emotion, and the emotional harvest begins. And the egregore grows. And the egregore gives you back as much as you give it, it just gives you back. Now, what is a prayer to an egregore? When you pray to an egregore, when you think you're praying to some god, when you pray to an egregore, it will give you this energy back in the form of your preferred form. Okay? Are you following this? Are you understanding what I'm trying to tell you? What I'm trying to show you? When you go to an event and you give it your energetic charge, when you feel exhausted and drained after the game, next time when you go, when you're having a shit day, it's going to tell you, "Hey Brad, I know you're having a shit day, but you know what? Here's your favorite player scoring a goal. At least your team won tonight." When you go to a church, or when you go to some cult like gathering, and you pray to whatever idol or god you have in there on the stands, when you pray to the god of war, you feed its egregore this energy, and so do the rest of your friends who go to this church or religious place of gathering, of place of worship, right? It will feed this energy into it, and then sometime in the future, because the egregore grew, it will give you this energy back in the form of your preference. Meaning, if I go and I pray and I say, "Please, I'm going to war. Give me the power to kill all enemies, to slay all of my enemies," it will give you inhuman strength in that particular moment. But that inhuman strength in that particular moment is just you exchanging your past energy that you gave away and now harnessing that energy in the future. A lot of fighters do this without even knowing. A lot of martial arts artists, great fighters, they do this, and when they fight, they feel possessed almost by some sort of force. And this is also what happens in training. When you train, you give out this incredible amount of energy. That energy is then manifest into an egregore of your gym, an egregore of your nation. And then that egregore is upkept. And when the time comes to war, or to battle, or to fight, it will empower you with this inhuman strength, right? And you'll say, "Well, I felt like something possessed me. I don't know what happened in there in the ring. I felt something possessed me," right? Now, the notion and the concept of an egregore, this is a neutral thing. Understand that too. It has no sentience of its own. It only has, very much like the dog, it has a primal urge to sustain itself, to survive, to grow larger for no particular reason other than it being a symptom of what it is. By its essence, it's something that was nothing that became something. In powerful egregores, the most powerful egregores, these concentrations of energy, then become elemental beings. So, elemental beings are powerful egregores that are so powerful, and the collective belief system of the human collective, we create them like fire, for example, right? Fire burns. fire and all of the other elements, they're also permanent egregores that have upgraded into these elemental beings that represent in our three-dimensional plane the very forces of nature: air, earth, water. This is what all the fundamental, you know, astrology and any kind of, like formulaic esoteric science is built upon. And yes, these things are these are all forms or thought forms that have been prayed to and idolized throughout humanity's history. Like Zoroastrianism, for example, right? They worship fire, the element of fire. But a a, a great thinker, a wise thinker will say, well, you know what? Fire is a very strong force, but it's also just a part of this world. It's not that it's an all-encompassing. Why did we choose to worship fire? Well, because fire, right, was the preference of their blessing. It brings warmth and destruction to their enemies, let's say, right? Warmth to them and destruction of their enemies. It brings expiation, purification. Now, outside of these elemental beings who are also called plasmoids, outside of these plasmoid beings, there exists a hierarchy of these egregores. And these egregores are created and destroyed on a regular basis. Even COVID is an egregore. Mm. And any egregore that has to do with death is, as you can imagine, has very interesting implications as to what that is and what that feeds off. So when you are an unconscious creator, what when we say that, oh, you have to be a conscious creator. When you're an unconscious creator, which is most people, 99% of people on this planet right now, as we speak, they're unconsciously helping to reinforce the status quo of our world. They're creating this reality as we speak. When we say you're an unconscious creator, what does that mean, really? That means that your base instinct, your base emotional state, which is almost fully suggested by your external environment, that is building out your belief system. Only what you can see and touch on the outer shell of life, right? And as that is building up your system, you become a slave of it. This is what they call the matrix. When people come out and, oh, you live in a matrix, you live in a, you know, simulation or whatever, this is what they mean, right? It is a self-sustaining world sustained by the very people who are trapped within it, and the only proof of the laws of this world that they have is the proof they are presented, through their five senses. So you're stuck in a room of mirrors, a room of illusions, and the room itself convinces you to feed into this illusion. And then there's these formulaic sciences like astrology and numerology and these exalted communities and exalted leaders who are idolized and, you know, put on a pedestal. They'll tell you, I've figured it out. They've only figured out 1 billionth of a corner of the variety and variation within the quantum field of endless possibility of this particular world, our world. They figured out how their own input works. This is the irony of God, my friends. It's the irony of this world. This is why ego kills. Because the person who is convinced that they figured out how the world works is only convinced of what they've input into the world, and the world is now inputting back into their lives, and they become a representation of this exaltation of, oh my god, the world is based on numerology. Oh, woo, I figured it out. Oh, it's all about astrology, and if you follow astrology and these things will happen, and yada yada. None of them can scale their art beyond their influence. And this is why those kooks with the addiction to numbers and patterns and formulas and the nines and sevens and threes and 33s, all of them blind morons who will sit you down and with a straight face tell you, oh, I figured out how the world works. This is the mechanism behind the world. You absolute idiot. And these are the people who do not need any humbling from God or a higher being, because they're stuck in prisons made by their own foolishness. You understand what I'm saying? But God and the higher mind, the true higher mind, the 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 power source of all creation, that higher mind exists outside of formulaic truths. There is no recipe, there is no skeleton key to this world other than acceptance and faith. God exists outside of astrology. God exists outside of numerology. God exists outside of anything you can grasp on a formulaic level. Because God is not the zero, it's not the one, it's not the two. God begins when you can't count anymore. That's where God begins. Where there is no metric. That's God. When it makes no sense in your life, the chances of something happening in your life is 0.0000000000001%. That is the subtle, gentle hand of God making its way into yours and mine foolish, infantile understanding, incomplete understanding of this great world that we live in. Not a prison world, not a matrix, not a hallucination, definitely not a simulation. That is far beyond the comprehension of these baby systems, right? So if you input numerology into your life, you have given it. Do you remember what I said about free will and choice? You have given it power over you. If you input enemy signs or whatever you want to talk about into your life, you have given that power. You have decided, and you have sent your energy and your belief system into this egregore. And for as far as the influence of this particular egregore goes, it will affect your life. Now, then the question can be asked, well, then what is objective reality? Well, objective reality are the elemental or plasmoid egregores or beings that exist on a permanent level because they are such stagnant energies or such stagnant truths that it would take a millennia to dissolve. But of course, they come from a realm where time and space does not matter. It is for us where linearity in time and space matter a lot because we have these decaying, depleted bodies that can only carry us so far. This is why reincarnation is required. Now, of course, there are other interdimensional beings as well. They are called aspects for a reason. And now these fools who have trapped themselves in these belief prisons. That's what they call it, the limitation of the mind, right? Will then invite these beings who will then feed on the emotions that they experience during this, because it's called an emotional harvest. And someone will tell you, well, we live in a matrix and yada yada, and we're just vessels, energetic and emotional vessels for beings to feed on. No, my friend, you're an energetic vessel for beings to feed on. Don't tell me what I am. That's not what I've decided. That's what you've told me that you've decided. So if you want to be a vessel for interdimensional beings to feed, every ritual, all magic, put it through the lens of this knowledge, and you understand the simplicity behind it. You understand the method, the function behind it. It's so simple. It's so easy. It is offensively easy in comparison to the design of the creator. To the design of the creator of this world. It's offensively simple. Now, confessing this is one thing and admitting this is one thing, which most people would not. They don't have the guts to, even though they have a some sort of a nagging feeling that they should. I always ask them, well, you know what? You're never going to admit this to me, but what's that nagging feeling you have in your throat? This won't leave you alone. Maybe you've dug yourself into a corner that you don't know how to get out of. Is that the truth? Is that your life? And this is where their shadow work begins, because they have to understand that I've been a fool, right? I've allowed myself to think that I had superior understanding of something that is ever shifting, ever changing, and incomprehensible by design. So, what are plasmoid portals? Plasmoids are these energetic beings. They're pure energy without matter. So, what is matter? Matter is also energy. It's just dense. It's just moving, but just slower and slower, becomes more dense, more densified. Now, energy that is not densified into material matter, this is free flowing. You can flow through time and space, right? You can be anywhere and everywhere, wherever it wants, not constrained by the limitations of our physical existence. And when does physical existence even begin? Physical existence begins when physicality is created. And some things in our material world, right, are more dense, heavier. Other things are less dense. Now imagine if you had a sort of portal, because how can a material being create contact with an immaterial being, with a non-material being? Now imagine if you had a means to do so. If you imagine if you had a portal where you could make contact with such a being. These, portals, so to speak, they can happen with great concentrations of energy. What we talked about with interdimensional entities and emotional harvests and so on and so forth. Let's say there are some techniques, which I won't be talking about today, that allows you to peer through the portal of the material and into the immaterial in a sort of possessiveness that allows you to make contact with these energetic beings. They're powerful. And then you'll tell them, you know what? I will bring you a worthy sacrifice. I will cut down this goat in your name, and it will exert a great fear as we're cutting his throat. Because this is an entity that feeds on fear. So there are some other entities that say aspects, egregores, that feed on exaltation. There are some other egregores that feed on awe and belief, anxiety, paranoia, pleasure, joy, sex. So we'll host an orgy in your name. The shaman will say. And then the egregore, in return, right, will bring about rain, which is also energy, right? They'll bring about rain. And the shaman of the village will say, you see, We have cast this goat into the fire, and it screamed in agony, and we fed our God, and our God blessed us with rain. And then those idiots will worship it. So you understand that the greatest crutch to the human experience is the very fact that it is limitless. Because when a thing is limitless, it lives in a constant state of paranoia and total responsibility for whatever it does and manifests in this life. And separation is just a symptom of the fear of oneness. And when you are a being like this, you need to create your own limitations, your own prison, the prison of your mind, the prison of your belief system, the prison of your degeneracy, so to speak. You make yourself smaller, even your dreams are small, like I said before, right? You make yourself smaller, insignificant. You say, I'm just a little man in a big world, and the Matrix has come out to get me. When in truth, all the Matrix is a mirror of your own lack, of your incompetence, and the deficit in your capacity for acceptance of the unknown. Now, what is the fate of a race that partakes in self deception on a collective level like this, where instead of embracing a world in which limitation does not exist, they aggressively enforce these collective limitations upon one another to keep one another trapped, and denies the godly destiny of each spirit that has reincarnated into this world. The fate of such a community, if it could be called that, is termination. The fate of this sort of community is self destruction because it is based on the principle of self hatred, on the principle of scarcity and lack. It is a technocratic fate. A society becomes a technocratic society when it can no longer fix the problems it has created through natural means. The irony of such an existence, right? The incredible humor of such an existence. This is where we are. I want you to understand this is where you are. You live in a world that is a shared world of infinite potential where human beings create the very quote unquote interdimensional entities because we're also interdimensional entities having a non-interdimensional experience. When we create the same interdimensional entities that then feed on our regressive selves, and then we appeal to these same entities as gods and idols and formulas and recipes. We want a simple key to life when all there is to understand that God exists beyond the formula, beyond the matrix, beyond simplicity. God exists there where you and I and no one else has any power, only the agency to make the choice and the leap of faith or not. So think on that. Think on where you are and think of the grandiose nature of our world and think on what you're inputting into your life. What kind of systems do you believe in that are affecting your life, that are shaping the world around you? And why? Why are you doing this to yourself? Because that's what you're doing. That's the question you should be asking yourself. Something bad happened to you. Why am I doing this to myself? Because that's what's happening. No more, no less than that. Really, really think about that. And then understand the limitations of your own mind. Understand that the limitations that are present in your life only come from your inability and your lack of vision for what could be or what you could be. The vision of freedom from the same cyclical, almost prophetic regurgitation of the same type of living as our forebears who have learned very little and who have done close to nothing in relation to spiritual advancement, in humbleness, and not the questioning of this or that law or creation of this or that theory or theories about democracy and social dynamics and friggin' communism, whatever you want to call it, these systems. Because when a man is without faith and he finds himself alone, all that man thinks about is death. There's nothing more to life than that for him. There's very little reason to go on. But when a man lives in faith, he invites miracles into his life because he has allowed the existence of these miracles into his life. So if you can live in faith, if you can go beyond the formulaic, if you can stop questioning the world and start understanding it, it will flow through you and you will become a channel to those forces who cannot be contained within systems. You will become the outlier. You will become Neo in the Matrix. Think on that. That's all for today. Next one, we'll talk about physiognomy. Thanks to everyone who's listened in live. And yeah, have a good day.